Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to be looking at how our mapping of the outer edges of the solar system is basically a century-old cold case. Picture it. For generations, astronomers have been staring out into absolute darkness, trying to track down a phantom heavyweight lurking at the very edge of our celestial neighborhood. If you're ready for a rich, immersive journey through a mystery that spans over 100 years, complete with false leads, accidental discoveries, and a massive, unseen world that might still be out there right now, you are in the exact right place.
Now here's a question for you. What if the absolute greatest discoveries in our solar system were actually born from mathematical mistakes? It sounds crazy, right? But the really interesting thing about this whole quest to find planets beyond Neptune is that it literally started with bad math. Seriously, imagine launching the most ambitious manhunt in astronomical history, searching for a massive, unseen gravitational culprit, only to realize decades later that your clues were just measurement errors. But as you'll see, even though the math was way off, it ended up completely changing how we view our own cosmic backyard.
To really wrap our heads around this mystery, we kind of have to shift our perspective. You can't think of the outer solar system as just empty, sterile space. Think of it more like a pitch-black, entirely uncharted deep ocean. It is unbelievably remote. I mean, to an observer here on Earth, even the brightest objects out there are thousands of times fainter than what your eye can actually see. So if there's a giant out there, it's swimming in the deepest, darkest waters, and the only way we can find it is by looking for the tiny gravitational ripples it leaves behind in the current.
Section 1. The Hunt for Planet X. So looking at how this all started, the historical search for these outer planets has honestly been like a giant cosmic game of whack-a-mole. Every time an old prediction gets defeated, a new one pops right up. Think back to 1846. We found Neptune simply because Uranus's orbit was wobbling. Astronomers were like, hey, something massive has got to be pulling on it. And then, well, they thought Neptune was wobbling too. So by 1906, Percival Lowell kicks off this intense hunt for an even further planet, a planet X. That eventually leads to the famous discovery of Pluto in 1930. But you know, with the first Kuiper Belt object found in 1992 and Pluto officially getting demoted in 2006, the story was far, far from over.
Section 2. An accidental discovery.
This brings us to Percival Lowell. He spent a decade, the last years of his life actually, obsessively searching for a planet about 7 times the mass of Earth that he firmly believed was wobbling Uranus and Neptune. Now, he passed away before finding it, but his observatory ended up hiring this 22-year-old amateur astronomer from Kansas named Clyde Tombaugh to keep the grueling work going. And guys, imagine playing a high-stakes game of Spot the Difference, but with millions of tiny dots. Tombaugh would mount 2 photographic plates of the exact same patch of sky, taken days apart, into this massive machine called a blink comparator. As it rapidly switched views between the plates, he'd sit there staring through a microscope for hours on end, looking for one single tiny dot shifting in retrograde motion against the fixed stars.
And then, in 1930, after nearly a year of this completely mind-numbing, diligent search, Tombaugh saw something blink. A tiny speck of light had moved just 3 millimeters across his plates over the course of 6 days. Now that incredibly slow, crawling motion, that meant it was incredibly far away, way past Neptune. So he walks down the hall, goes straight to the observatory director, and confidently drops this bombshell. Dr. Slipher, I have found your planet X.
Of course, with a new planet discovered, they needed a name for it. And this just perfectly captures the charm of that era. An 11-year-old English schoolgirl named Venetia Burney actually suggested the perfect name. She heard the news at breakfast from her grandfather and suggested Pluto, after the Roman god of the underworld, who, fittingly, could turn invisible. It was just a brilliant poetic fit for a freezing world hiding out there in the dark shadows of the solar system. The name was formally adopted, and Tombaugh became an absolute legend.
Section 3. The Kuiper Belt Unveiled. But here is the massive twist in our cosmic detective story. Astronomers started realizing pretty quickly that Pluto was just too faint. As you can see by tracking its estimated mass over the decades, it kept shrinking the better our telescopes got. Pre-1930, Lowell said we needed a heavyweight, around 10 Earth masses, to explain those planetary wobbles. Between 1930 and 1955, they downgraded Pluto to about 1 Earth mass. But then, in 1978, they discovered Pluto's moon, Charon. By watching how they orbited each other, astronomers could finally weigh Pluto accurately, and oh boy, it clocked in at just 0.002 Earth masses. It literally went from a heavyweight giant to an absolute featherweight. It was way, way too small to be Lowell's massive gravitational perturber.
The final nail in the coffin came in the 1980s.
NASA's Voyager 2 spacecraft pierced the darkness, flying past Uranus and Neptune, finally giving us highly accurate mass measurements for the very first time. And guess what? When researchers plugged those new, accurate numbers into the orbital equations, the supposed wobbles completely vanished. Neptune wasn't actually wobbling at all. That gravitational ghost they'd been hunting since 1906 was literally just an illusion caused by early, inaccurate measurements. Which means Clyde Tombaugh finding Pluto exactly where Lowell's bad math pointed was a total, beautiful, one-in-a-million accident.
Section 4. Why Pluto was demoted.
So that begs the question, if Pluto wasn't the giant planet X, what on Earth was it? Well, in 1992, our telescopes finally got good enough to spot other objects hanging out in Pluto's neighborhood. It turns out Pluto wasn't alone. It was just the brightest, first discovered chunk of ice in this massive donut-shaped debris field we now call the Kuiper Belt. But the real crisis of identity happened when we look at this comparison here. In 2005, astronomers discovered Eris, another icy body way out in the deep dark. Eris orbits independently, but get this, it's actually 25% more massive than Pluto. Once astronomers realized they were finding more and more of these ice dwarfs, they were at a serious crossroads. They either had to add dozens of new planets to our maps, meaning kids would be memorizing a list of like 50 or 60 planets, or they had to reconsider what a planet actually is.
And that controversial realization led right to the 2006 vote by the International Astronomical Union to reclassify Pluto. Astronomer Mike Brown, the guy who discovered Eris, impartially summed up the scientific reality with this famous, extremely blunt quote, "Pluto is dead." Now, obviously that sparked worldwide outrage, but the decision wasn't out of malice. It was just an acknowledgement that the outer solar system is simply built differently than the inner rocky worlds. Pluto, Eris, and all their neighbors are part of a massive third zone of our solar system. They represent a totally different class of celestial objects.
Section 5. The real Planet 9?
But wait, just when we thought the whole map of the solar system was settled, that deep ocean of space revealed fresh clues. We aren't hunting Lowell's ghost anymore, now we have brand new, compelling evidence. Researchers recently found dwarf planets like Sedna and another called 2012 VP-113 hanging out in this orbital no-man's land way beyond the main Kuiper Belt. Even weirder, they noticed that these objects, along with about 10 other extremely distant chunks of ice, all share these strange, highly stretched orbits, and they make their closest approach to the Sun at the exact same time. Their orbits are basically all bunched up together. Imagine a dozen cars on a massive racetrack, right? And for some reason, they all choose to drive right next to each other in a super tight cluster. Billions of years of cosmic evolution should have scattered them randomly. The fact that they're clustered like this heavily implies a gravitational tug from a massive, unseen shepherd holding them in place.
And all of those strange orbits point us to a massive number, 250. That is the distance measured in astronomical units where researchers estimate a true unseen planet might currently be lurking. Now, to put that into perspective, 1 astronomical unit is the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Neptune is at 30. So this proposed Planet 9, which they estimate to be a massive world somewhere between 2 and 15 times the mass of Earth, would be sitting out in the absolute freezing void, at least 250 times further away from the Sun than we are.
You might be wondering, if it's so big, why haven't we found it yet? Well, mapping the deep outer solar system right now is essentially akin to staring at the universe through a drinking straw. Our current telescopes can only observe tiny, tiny fractions of the sky at any given time. And if Planet 9 really is out there, it is unbelievably dim. It's reflecting almost zero sunlight back to us. Finding it requires scanning a massive, pitch-black haystack for a nearly invisible needle.
But, there is definitely hope. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Next-generation technology is coming online very soon. Take the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope being built in Chile. It's going to capture a continuous, decade-long, high-definition movie of the entire night sky. We won't be looking through that drinking straw anymore. If there is a massive, undiscovered world out there shepherding those distant ice rocks, we are finally going to see it blink. So, what do you think? Is our solar system hiding one last giant out there in the dark? Only time and a little bit more cosmic detective work will tell. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the unknown. Keep looking up and stay curious.